Welcome back to Cheddar's News Wrap, everyone. The Supreme Court earlier today handed down a decision that shuts down rogue members of the Electoral College, particularly in states that have laws explicitly prohibiting electors. Now, it is a somewhat weedy story, but what could it mean for November? Well, joining us now to discuss that and much, much more is Eugene Scott, reporter for The Fix at the Washington Post. Eugene, great to have you back on here on The Wrap. Starting with the Supreme Court decision, do you think that people will still clamor for electors to go against popular sentiment if President Trump wins a majority again?
I don't think that will be the case this year. There's quite a bit of frustration with the Electoral College process based on what happened in 2016. We're on track right now for the president not to receive the popular vote, just like he did not in 2016. And I think there's increased pressure on those in the Electoral College to vote according with the popular vote to prevent a lot of the controversy we saw in the previous election.
What particularly does this illuminate in the minds of voters who go to the polls in November?
Well, I think it, resurfaces the conversation about whether or not people's vote count. And there's some concern that perhaps they don't. And that's why you're going to continue to see pushback on the Electoral College, even moving forward, regardless of what happens with this election, because people really want to know that at the end of the day, when they make a decision, that decision will be honored by our lawmakers.
Certainly coming off of the weekend, we've got a lot of headlines to get to. Let's go here, though. The Trump administration earlier today released some numbers on the PPP loans that Congress has doled out over the past few months. Some big companies like P.F. Chang's, Girl Scouts, they are getting money from this small business program. So what do you believe is the big takeaway here? And is the small business relief program working the way it should?
Well, it doesn't appear to be working to many small business owners who fear that the president and his administration prioritize big business and corporations, especially those who perhaps may favor this administration. We've seen a significant number of mom and pop shops close their doors since the very early days of the pandemic because they had inadequate support, especially or at least including from the government. And so for some of these business owners to hear that corporations like P.F. Chang's are getting much needed government funds has been really frustrating. And we can expect them to continue to push back on this process as it moves into the next phase.
There was a question of moral hazard with regard to this program as well. We had heard from just the past hour or so that there were instances where some of the family members or extended family members of the Trump administration, even some of the regulators on Capitol Hill were able to get funds dispersed to their businesses as part of this broader program as well. How does that play into the minds of some of the smaller businesses who were going to be reliant on those funds and did not get them, even though they did apply?
This has been a frequent concern of the Trump administration since the very earliest days of this presidency, that it was rife with nepotism and priority given to those close to the president, family members, friends, and particularly donors. And if the president's administration does not put forward some facts and data pushing back on the belief that many people have that those closest to him have received preferential treatment, we can expect his Democratic rivals to use that against him as we move forward towards the election. And many Americans are grappling with how do we get out of this current economic situation.
Two more big topics I want to hit with you. Turning to the president's remarks over the weekend, why lean into the rhetoric of division and fear when the polling gap is so wide between the president and Joe Biden right now, as we saw in his remarks leading up to and on the 4th of July?
The president's campaign has made it very clear since the earliest days of the campaign for re-election that his priority is his base. Now, we know what the polls say regarding general voters, but when you look at those people who are closest to the president in terms of political worldview, he shares their views on culture war issues, including those related to racism, those related to Black Lives Matter, those related to police violence. And so the president is appealing to those voters. The problem is that those voters make up a decreasingly small amount of the electorate. And so while the president is hoping for them to turn out in record numbers to help him be victorious in November, he's going to need more than just those individuals.
All right, Eugene, I don't know if you were like any of the friends in my circle. You might be an 808s and Heartbreaks fan. You might be a Jesus is King fan. College Dropout. Okay, I'm a late registration fan. Well, Kanye West, he announced that he's apparently running for president over the weekend. Filing deadlines, though, have passed in most states. But what consequences could this have if he's serious about this?
Well, if he's serious, and there's belief that he is not, we get this type of response from Kanye when we know he has a project coming out soon, which he does, in addition to a licensing deal with Gap. But in the event that he actually does run, this is going to be really difficult to defeat Trump or Biden. He's already missed the deadline in several states to run as an independent, and he hasn't filed with the Federal Election Commission. But there is some concern about his run because he does remain popular with a segment of younger Americans and even Black Americans. And there's a belief that if he just carves off a few percentage points from Biden, that could give Trump an advantage. But that's thinking far ahead of what appears to be the case right now. It seems like what Kanye West is doing more than anything is attempting to promote a new project.
Eugene Scott, always a pleasure to have you on the show to get your insights. Thanks so much for joining us today.